Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, we're going to be doing another live Q&A. So if you have questions about freight broker startup or freight broker sales or marketing, scaling your business, right? Mindset, things of that nature. If you have any questions about starting or growing a successful freight brokerage, that's why I'm here today. I will do my absolute best to try to help you move forward in your journey, answer some of those questions. Or if I don't know the answers, I'll try to point you in the right direction. Again, thank you for being here. I do these lives every Monday at noon, and I appreciate you being here. For those of you that are just kind of getting live here, do me a favor. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. We're going to do some shout outs before we get started in the Q&A. Hold your questions until I say go, because again, they will get lost in the feed and then I won't be able to answer your questions. Okay. So hold your questions until I say go. For now, hit me up in the comments with the city and state that you're logging in from. Love to hear from you, whether you're watching this through LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're at. Let me know, and we'll get the show on the road shortly. Okay. So we got Anthony from Tampa, Alatusa from San Jose, California, Scott from Lubbock, Texas, Mike from Warren, Ohio, Brian from Independence, Oregon. Man, we got people from all over, from Oregon to Texas to Florida to Ohio. I'm excited that you guys are here. Thank you so much. Again, this is going to be a live Q&A. So here's the format. We're going to do some quick shout outs. Then we're going to do live Q&A. Now, I'm going to I have a lot on my plate, and I'm sure you do too. I'm going to try to limit this to 30 minutes, okay, as far as the Q&A. A lot of times these things will drag out for over an hour, and I'd love to help you, but what I'm going to try to do is condense the same number of questions into 30 minutes as an hour, but that's going to require some help for you. So pay attention, be ready with your questions when I say go so that we can jump in and start addressing those right away, okay? Harry from La La Land. Okay, cool. Azamarat from Chicago, Illinois. Patricia from Florida. Harry from Memphis, Tennessee. So we got people from all over the place. I'm excited you guys are here. Let me ask you something. Where are you guys tuning in from? From LinkedIn, from Facebook, from YouTube, where are you guys streaming this from? And if you're catching this on replay, hit me up in the comments with hashtag replay. Again, we're just going to take a minute or two to get people live, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. Hold your questions until I say go. We've got a True Narrative from San Antonio, Drenched from Virginia. All right, a lot of YouTube. Okay, so a lot more YouTube, and it looks like LinkedIn. Okay, cool. Yeah, not a lot of people are using Facebook these days. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I shouldn't say that, but it used to be when I used to do these lives, it was heavily Facebook and YouTube, and then LinkedIn kind of snuck in there. And so now I think LinkedIn and YouTube are definitely the number one and number two as far as people tuning in. Rosa from Florida. Welcome. And she's on YouTube. Cool. All right. So we're going to try to limit this to 30 minutes. I do have a couple more questions before we get started. Is there anybody in the audience right now watching that is a first-time listener? First time you've been in one of these lives? Hit me up in the comments really quick. Simultaneous to that, if you're already a Freight Broker Bootcamp student or client, maybe you're part of the Freight Broker Bootcamp startup training, maybe you've been a part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program, hit me up in the comments whether you're brand new, this is your first live, your first foray into this, and or if you're already a student of Freight Broker Bootcamp, which again is my startup program. You can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Or if you're a part of my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, which is more the sales coaching program. You can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay. That's currently closed, but we're going to be opening it up very, very soon. Okay. That brings a really good reminder. If you guys are not on the wait list for the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, you're missing the boat, because we're going to be opening up enrollment very soon. If you're not on the wait list, you won't get notified and you'll have no chance to join the program. Okay. The Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is where I take that piece of my brain, everything I've learned about freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, my entire freight broker sales system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a broker. And that's where I coach and teach you how to leverage that system to grow your freight brokerage. Again, it's a hybrid coaching and online course program. Again, we've put over 1,000 clients through that sales training program. This is for people that are already brokers or already agents. Maybe you're brand new, but you're already a broker or agent predominantly. If you're looking for startup help, then you're going to go to just the Freight Broker Bootcamp Startup Program. So get on that wait list because we're going to be opening enrollment very, very soon. Okay. I forgot to mention that the other day. So we got Mike, who's a student. True Narrative, who's brand new, awesome. Patricia, who's a student. Rosa Porter, who's a brand new student. First time on the live, but she's a brand new student. Yep, awesome. Drenched, first time listening, first time here. Good. Okay, true member, first time. Okay, awesome. Listening while you work, Robert, good. Okay, cool. All right, listen, that's good. Great feedback. Thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate it. Let me take down this banner. And while I'm doing that, now the ball's in your court. What questions do you have about starting or growing a successful freight brokerage or freight agency? The ball's in your court. Hit me up in the comments no matter where you're at. I'll do my absolute best to try to answer those questions. Again, if I don't know the answers, I'll try to point you in the right direction. Believe it or not, I don't know all the answers, but when I do answer these questions for you, these are based on my personal experience of owning a freight brokerage, right? And being in the freight brokerage industry since 2003, but equally as important, my experience as an entrepreneur. I've been very, very fortunate. I built 4 different businesses, 4 different multi-million-dollar companies in 4 different industries. Okay. So I've been very fortunate. And I've had a lot of ups, I've had a lot of downs, I've had a lot of experience, I made a lot of bad decisions, I made a lot of good decisions, I made a lot of mistakes. And so that's the type of experiential learning that we'll have in this. If you ask good questions, I'll give you my honest feedback, my honest answers, but it will come from experience. You know, I'm not typing it into Chat GPT and trying to give you an answer. Okay. So my answers come from experience, not from, generic crap that you find on Google. Okay. Or TikTok or wherever the hell you find it. Okay. I think we got some questions. All right, cool. Awesome. Question from Anonymous. I try to use the same carriers instead of the load board, but every load they want more and more. I always give more than the average DAT. What can I do? All right, so it's an interesting question. You started out, and what I love about what you said is you try to use the same carriers over and over again. So rather than doing what we call a one and done, meaning you set up a carrier, you move one load with them, and then you never use them again, or maybe you use them 2 years from now, okay? That's going to happen periodically, but you want to try to limit that as much as humanly possible. So your focal point should be trying to develop relationships with those carriers that you have. But here's the reality. Just like the relationships you try to build with shippers, the relationships you try to build with carriers are not always going to work. They're not always going to flourish because sometimes their needs and wants don't match up with your needs and wants. Okay. So don't feel bad if not every carrier you do business with becomes your best friend and you start moving load with them every day. That's a great outcome and when you can get it. But the reality is sometimes they just have different wants, needs, and desires than you, and maybe you can revisit it at another time. So you want to try, once you bring a carrier on, just like when you try to enhance the relationship with your shipper, you should try to enhance the relationship with your carrier. How do you do that? By learning more about their business, asking them questions, right? Finding out what their goals are, what their wants are, what their needs are. If you give them what they need, then they're more likely to accept it. But if you're trying to force your agenda, then they're not always going to do that. Now, again, you can ask them if you move a lane with them. Ooh, wow, I'm not sure what happened to my light there. Hold on one second. Oh, one of my lights. Hold on. A little technical. I got to replace this light apparently. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Give me a sec. There it is. Oh. Hopefully it stays. All right. Sorry about that. So I want to make sure I'm answering the question. Always give more than average debt rate. What can I do? Well, here's the reality. If they continue to bump the rate, all you can really do is hold the mark. Now, if the rates are going up, then you may have to raise your rates. If the rates are going down, you may have to lower your rates. So you're going to have to educate them a little bit as to what's going on with the market. Are rates going up? Are rates going down? A lot of carriers are going to know where it's at. Is fuel up? Is fuel down? So I think educating them is one part of it. I think enhancing that relationship and really understanding what drives their business and what they need. And I think not taking it personal, that if they need to get more money into that load for whatever reason, that you may have to find another carrier. So, if you've got a lane that you run regular from Buffalo to Atlanta and you run it 2 or 3 times a week, you might have to have 10 different carriers that you've worked with on that in order to, number one, make sure they have capacity, and number two, that their needs are going to line up with yours. So I hope that helps a little bit. I really like where your head is at by not going to the load boards and trying to bring on a new carrier for every load. I think it just takes some time. And I think you need to figure out what makes them tick, and you'll probably have a better outcome. Hope that helps. Ella2 says, BOLs, do they have to sign the original BOL from the shipper, or can they sign the BOL that I make with all the same info? Okay. So if a shipper issues a BOL, okay, then they need to sign that BOL. Okay. That's just if the shipper is going to want, so sometimes shippers will want you to create the bill of lading. Okay, that happens sometimes. I really don't like getting into that too much, but sometimes they'll ask you to create the bill of lading and there'll only be one version of the bill of lading. Sometimes they'll create their own bill of lading. If the shipper creates their own bill of lading, I'm not sure why you're creating a bill of lading. Okay, but if a shipper creates a bill of lading, they're going to want their bill of lading signed when it comes back to them on the invoicing end, because that carrier is going to send you their invoice with the signed bill of lading, the shipper signed bill of lading, and then you're going to take that invoice or a copy of that invoice, or that you're going to take that bill of lading or a copy of that bill of lading with your invoice, and then you're going to bill your shipper. Okay, so that's my take on it. Oh, let's put a timer on here too. Siri, set an alarm for 25 minutes. Okay, we're going to try to make sure we can wrap this up. Anthony asks, which niches are best starting point for new brokers and why? Okay, so, there are 4 primary ways that you can identify a niche, and it's not always based on just on equipment, okay? So you can base it on an industry or a product. You can base it on equipment type, right? Like vans, reefers, flatbeds, right? You can do it based on geography, right? Like the Northeast or Midwest outbound or Midwest inbound or Texas or California outbound, Florida outbound, whatever, right? So you can put a geography in there, or you can do what I recommend, which is a hybrid, right? Which is kind of a combination of 2 or more of those 3 that I gave before. So I'll tell you the story. Well, I'm not going to tell you that right now because I've told the story before how I developed my niche, Northeast outbound van freight. But the niches that are the easiest for new freight brokers to understand are van, because the least complex niche is just van freight. Okay. Now, if you add some geography into that, it might create a little bit of complexity. But I think van freight is probably the least complex. The most complex is probably heavy haul. Very hard to start off in the heavy haul niche if you don't have a lot of experience there, or you don't have a really strong hands-on mentor. So I think flatbed and reefer are in between, depending upon the type of product that you're shipping. I mean, if you're doing, ice cream that's deep freeze, it's got to be 20 below. There's a lot of pitfalls there, right? If you're doing produce that needs to be running at different temperatures, right? And is perishable, that's another issue. Van freight is probably the least complex. Now, as far as industries go, anything that goes on a van, right? Anything that goes in a box truck, okay? Typically, that's going to be stuff that can be loaded from a dock from the rear of the trailer, right? And it's loaded with a forklift. or maybe even hand loaded. And it doesn't need temperature control. So it could be anything from paper to building supplies to bottled beverages to, almost anything. I mean, you can put almost anything on a truck as long as it doesn't need to be side loaded, which is where you'd bring in a flatbed, or if it doesn't need temperature control, which is where you'd bring in a reefer. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up question, let me know. Robert asks, what examples can you give of what happens when a bond needs to be used and how expensive it is to pay back? Is it payment when you pay it back? Let me read that again. What examples can you give of what happens when a bond needs to be used and how expensive is paying it back? Is it payments when you pay? Okay, got it. Okay, cool. All right, it makes sense now. Got it. So in order to become a licensed freight broker, you need to have a freight broker surety bond. Okay. Now, a freight broker surety bond is a guarantee to pay from brokers to carriers. So it's a guarantee that the broker will pay the carrier. So the surety bond company guarantees that the carrier will be paid. Now, if there, for whatever reason, if there's a payment that's not made by the broker to the carrier, intentionally or unintentionally, the carrier can then file a claim with the surety bond company, and that surety bond company is going to reach out to the broker and they're going to say, what's going on? Okay. Typically they're going to say, what's going on? Why didn't you pay this? If it was an oversight, then the broker just pays it direct and the claim gets dropped. Or if the broker says, well, they didn't do this or they didn't do that, or it's a fraudulent load, it's not something we owe, whatever the case may be, then the bonding company is going to determine whether that's a legitimate claim. And if they determine it's a legitimate claim from the carrier, they're going to have to pay the carrier. Okay. That's their job as a surety bond company. Now, if they have to pay the carrier, you as the broker are going to have a certain amount of time to pay them back because you're going to have to reimburse the surety company for the bond. Okay. Because again, this is an insurance policy. This isn't like a homeowner's insurance. This is a surety bond, just a guarantee to pay. So we have a third party that's guaranteeing that the carriers will be paid if it's a legitimate claim. So in most cases, what's going to happen is the surety bond company is going to reach out to the broker. They're going to say they're going to tell them that there's a claim, and the brokers are typically going to pay it if it was an oversight or if there's, some sort of miscommunications. If they don't pay it, and the surety bond company is going to determine, well, it's not a valid claim, at which it'll disappear, or it is a valid claim, at which point the brokers are going to have to pay it back. I don't think you're going to be able to make payments on that. You may have a short period of time, depending upon the company, may have a little bit of flexibility, but typically you're going to have to repay them pretty quickly, in order to keep your bond. Okay, so you're going to have to turn that around pretty quick, but it could vary from surety bond to surety bond company. Okay. But I've never heard of them allowing you to make payments to do it. Question, Trey Wade, is it wise to use a load board TMS like DAT, or should I utilize secondary TMS as a plugin compatible with the load boards? Virtually all TMSs are compatible with the load boards. Truck Stop, DAT, all the major load boards. Okay. In most cases, all the major TMSs will allow you to post your loads to the TMS and they'll auto post to the load boards, right? That's a very basic feature these days. So is it wise to use a load board TMS like DAT, or should I mean, there probably are some advantages to using the DAT TMS, like the integration, particularly the integration with the DAT load board. But as a whole, I don't think there's a huge benefit there as a whole. I know the DAT has had not only their load board, but their TMS for a long time. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I've never personally used it. I've seen it. I know clients that use it. But personally, I would have to compare the pros and cons to the DAT TMS versus another TMS. So for example, a TMS that we recommend a lot and that we've got a long-standing relationship and partner with, and that hundreds of our clients have signed up for. I'm going to send you the link right now if you guys want to check it out. You can get a free trial and you don't even need to put a credit card in. Let's see. Okay. So you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/TMS. That's Tim Hyam, the CEO, and my friend from Ascend TMS. If you go there, you can sign up for a free trial with no credit card, but you have to put in the coupon code. You have to put in FBBC. Okay. So you have to put in the coupon code FBBC to let them know you come from our community. If you do that, then again, you won't have to put a credit card in. You get a free trial, and they offer you some additional bonuses and stuff there too. So you could do that. But again, I do that because I know Tim. I know the software really well. I know our clients have been extremely happy with it. Our students have been extremely happy with it. We've got tons of rave reviews from our students. It doesn't mean the DAT is a bad system. It just means you need to compare the two. But I don't think there's a huge benefit to using a load board TMS other than maybe a little bit closer integration with that individual load board. So if that's what you're looking for, then that might be a good fit for you. Interesting question, though. Eli asks, what I'll need to succeed in the industry? Far away to the US. How should I find a broker to work under licensed agent? Okay. Okay. So if you're in a foreign country, right? If you're outside of the US, you can become a freight agent abroad. Okay. So the way that you'll find a brokerage is just like anybody else here in the US, right? You're going to find somebody who has an agent program. You're probably not going to want to go to the big programs, right? You're not going to want to go to the top 10 or top 20 agent programs. You're going to want to work with small to medium-sized brokers, okay? Because those have probably a bigger need for growth and are going to be more flexible with working with people depending upon their experience level, depending upon, their geography, so on and so forth. So that's where I would go. But yeah, you can become an agent if you're outside the country. Again, you want to make sure that, if you're going to do that, then you're going to be able to work the normal business hours here in the US, because most freight is going to move somewhere between 7 and 5 p.m., depending upon the time zone you're focused into. And then you're not going to be able to do a lot at nights or weekends based on our time zone. So if you're in, the UK, or you're in France, or you're in wherever, Africa, or wherever you're at, I don't know where geographically you're located. We've had students from 16 different countries go through this program. We've had agents and brokers from all over the world graduate from our program and start successful businesses. But again, it depends upon you specifically. And I hope that's a start. If you got a follow up, let me know. Congratulations. She got your first load. Awesome. You've been in here week after week after week. I remember seeing your name week after week in the live. So congratulations. As a Marat, it's very hard for me to do live cold calls because I sold my brokerage in 2016. So I'm not a broker anymore. Okay. I had my brokerage from 2003 to 2016. I sold it. I grew that business to $80 million a year in sales, and then I sold it. Since then, I've focused very heavily on the Freight Broker Bootcamp startup program and the sales accelerator. We've had over 10,000 students go through that program. So it's very hard for me to do live cold calls because if I'm calling a shipper, I got to be representing a broker as an agent, or I got to have a brokerage authority. I'm not going to make cold calls to people just randomly, right? It doesn't make any sense to me because I'd be misrepresenting myself if I told them I was a broker or an agent, and I'm not. So it's hard for me to do that. I do a lot of training around freight broker sales. I have interviews with students. But if you specifically are looking for freight broker sales help, right? And you're looking for how to get shippers, and you're looking for the proper way to do cold calling or cold outreach, I said it at the very beginning, and I'm going to say it again. Get on the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator waitlist. That is my Freight Broker Sales coaching program. That's where I teach you my system on freight broker sales, which allowed me to do over $200 million as a freight broker. So you got to get on the wait list if you want to get notified when spots open up. And when they do open up, then we'll see if we're a good fit and maybe you get a chance to work together. I have had over 1,000 students go through that program. And at the end of that program, we ask all of our students to rank us 1 to 10, right? After they've completed the program. And the average rating is a 9.2 out of 10. I would have been happy with a 7, ecstatic with an 8. It's a 9.2. I can't get any better than that. I mean, I think the program is very strong. We've got a lot of great, success stories from people that have graduated from that program. So if you're looking specifically for Freight Broker sales help, this is not Freight Broker startup help. That's my Freight Broker Bootcamp program. But the sales accelerator, okay, is you got to get on the wait list for that. Okay. So I hope that helps. Let me get rid of that banner real quick. I'm scrolling. Let me find some more questions here. Sorry. Mike, really good question. If you did it all over again, what would you do differently as a startup? Things for us to maybe focus on. Okay, so a few things that I would probably do different. I would probably, if I did it different today, meaning if I was starting today, not starting back in 2003, if I was starting today, I would not build my own TMS. For those of you that don't know, I built, not me, but my company, we built our own TMS software. We invested over 7 figures into that software over the lifetime of the software, okay? So we invested a lot of money into our own TMS. If I did that today, I would not build my own TMS, okay? So a lot of reasons why, but the biggest reason why is there's a lot of great software out there now. Back in 2003, there wasn't. So that would be one of the big ones. I would not build my own TMS. I would leverage an existing TMS, which are way more affordable and have a lot more features, okay? And are a lot more stable, believe it or not, and are way less of a headache. Number 2, I would really focus very, very heavily on carrier relationships. And what I mean by that is not just being friendly with them on the phone, but really trying to understand the needs of that carrier and really trying to develop a not just a surface level relationship, but peeling that onion back where we could really understand the opportunities for us to work together so that we could have a smaller number of carriers doing a larger number of loads, right? And so I would probably spend a lot more time with those carriers. Once I had freight moving and I started moving loads and I had a brand new carrier come on, I would probably invest quite a bit of time trying to develop those relationships, a lot more time. That would be number 2. Number 3, let's think of another one. I would, as we started to scale up, right? First year we did $1 million in sales, then we did $3 million in sales, then we did $6 million in sales, then we did $12 million in sales, and so on and so forth. I would delegate faster. Okay. What I mean by that is, in order to grow, you're not going to be able to stay a one-man operation forever or a one-woman operation forever. You're going to have to start hiring and training people and coaching people and working with people and managing people. That's step 1. And then once they become proficient, you're now going to have to delegate and trust and give up some control. And so I would probably do that faster because I think we would have scaled faster. Okay. I think we would have scaled faster. So those are 3 things that I would do different. I'm not sure if I hit the mark for what you're looking for, but if not, hit me with a follow-up. Thanks for the kind words, Brian. Thank you so much. Rosa asks, what are the main challenges in tanker and overhaul loads? I'm going to be very honest with you. On a personal level, I don't have a lot of experience with tanker loads. I mean, I know we moved tankers. I mean, we had offices and agents that moved tankers, but I never had a lot of personal experience with moving tankers. But in the experience that I did have, the biggest challenge that I saw was that it was hard to source capacity because there are a lot less tanker companies out there than there are vans or reefers or flatbeds. Okay. So it's a very doable niche, right? But tankers, there are way less tanker companies out there, and they don't have a tendency to post their trucks as often either, right? So it's not like a van. So I'm not saying the tankers don't post their loads to load boards, because some of them do, but a lot of them don't. So I think sourcing capacity for that niche might be one of the biggest challenges. The other side of it is, I think a lot of stuff that goes in tankers, not all of it, but a lot of stuff that goes in tankers is hazmat. And so you got all the complexity of hazmat, right? Of hazmat shipping, which creates another level of complexity. So those would probably be the two biggest challenges for someone new. Okay. Hope that helps, Rosa. The True Narrative, what's the best load board to use? There's a bunch of them out there. The two biggest are the DAT and Truckstop. I think right now, I had this question recently. I think right now it's Truckstop. Okay. The promotions that they offer, the things that they've done, the new change in management, the new technology that they've launched, the new programs that they've launched. So if you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/load board, that's where you can sign up for Truckstop and you'll get the special promotion they have going on. But I really like Truckstop. I've had a long-term relationship with DAT. I was a customer of theirs since probably the first month we ever, started the brokerage back in 2003. And we use them, and the company that I sold still uses them today. So they're a good company. And I think some of it depends upon your niche and the way, they're just different, right? They're the same. There's still a hub where carriers and brokers come together and make a match. But right now, I think it's Truckstop. So that's just my 2 cents. But again, you can't go wrong with either one, but a personal opinion, I would pick Truckstop right now. So you can go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/load board. That's a special promotional link where you'll get the best deal they're offering, and you can get signed up. Hope that helps. Give me 1 second. I'm scrolling through here. Can we use Central Dispatch to find loads to broker out? Central Dispatch is more, from what I recall, is more car hauling. And if you're getting loads from there, you're double brokering. Now, if you're a car hauler and you're a carrier, you can definitely get loads from there because brokers are going to be posting their loads to Central Dispatch. But from what I recall about Central Dispatch, and I didn't use it a lot personally, is that it was more for car hauling or auto hauling. So if you're a broker trying to get loads from Central Dispatch, you're going to be double brokering. Just like if you were a broker trying to get loads from the DAT or Truckstop, it's going to be double brokering. So it's a no bueno. Okay. But if you're a carrier, then that'd be a great place for you to go. Scott, do you still have use for a printer? I think you still need a printer, even though you use it way, way less than in the past, because there are just going to be certain things that you're going to want to print out. Is it an absolute necessity? Can you get by without it? Probably. But I think that from a convenience perspective, there might be certain things that you might want to print out. I still print things out to this day. Okay. And I know brokers that do that as well, but you will be able to get away with the majority of it digitally. Okay. You'll be able to do digital signatures. You'll be able to scan things. You'll be able to store things digitally. And that's what you do want to do. You don't want to store a lot of paper. Okay. I remember when I had my brokerage, we had an entire wall that was probably, I don't know, 50 foot long. 40 foot long, 40, 50 foot long. There was nothing but filing cabinets that were this high. Filing cabinet. And it was all carrier paperwork. It was all carrier contracts and documentation and load details and all this stuff that we had. It was a nightmare. And then thank God we actually created our own document management system, which was another piece of technology we developed, which you wouldn't have to do today because they're readily available. And then we had all that scanned and we got rid of all those file cabinets. So yeah, hope that helps. How well do you research a shipper? Well, it depends on how good you are at it, and it depends on how deep you want to do research. But you do want to gather some sales intelligence on a prospect before contacting them. You don't want to just look at a list and say, hey, this is XYZ widget company. Here's the phone number. Call them and hope for the best, right? You want to look at their website. You want to see what type of products they ship. You want to do a search, maybe look at some of their press releases or recent news. You want to look on Google, do a quick search for the company and for the industry. And you want to look on LinkedIn and see if you can find the shipping manager, logistics manager, and see what they got going on. So typically, I can do that right now in 2 or 3 minutes. But if you're brand new to it, it might take you 5 or 10 minutes. Now, I don't want you to spend 5 hours a day doing research on Google and LinkedIn. The more in-depth the research, the longer it takes, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. So you can pull up a website, look at their product, look at their recent news, and that'll take you 60 seconds. Then if you go to Google, you do a search, you're going to know if there's any interesting articles or anything relevant or new within 60 seconds. You go to their LinkedIn, do a search, you're going to know within 1 or 2 minutes. If there is a shipping manager, logistics manager, you're going to know a little bit about them. You're going to be able to peruse. And then from there, you're going to use that sales intelligence as a way to create a compelling sales hook, as a way to build rapport quicker, as an icebreaker, as a way to get your foot in the door faster. Okay? So, but the good thing about those, you're going to take all that sales intelligence, you're going to put it in your CRM, and you're going to retain that information after the call so that you then don't have to do that again in the future. The next time you call them, you'll know that they're, the product that they use, and you're going to know a recent news update, and you're going to know the shipping manager's name. You're going to know all that, right? So you won't have to do that multiple times. So I hope that helps. Oh boy, I think we're coming up on our half hour. Okay, question, KMR. Would it be wise for a complete novice of the industry to start as a broker agent at this time? Yeah, if you're a total novice, I highly recommend you start as a freight agent, not a freight broker. Why? Being a freight agent is exponentially easier and less complicated than being a broker. Plus, there's way less capital expenditure and way less risk. So I would strongly advise, if you are a newbie, start out. Oh, all right, I'm going to keep going here for a minute, but that was our 30-minute timer. Start out as a freight agent and not a freight broker. Now, as far as timing in the industry, there's no perfect time to start a business. There are multi-billion dollar companies that started at the deepest of recessions, and there are companies that were extremely well financed and launched at the peak of an industry that have went out of business. So there is no perfect time. But on a personal level, I believe that starting when the market is on the downside and is projected and really only has upside, because we've already hit the bottom, right? And we've been flat for a while, right? We were in a peak, now we're in a valley. What's going to happen after the valley? A peak. But if you start your business at the top of a peak, right? Sometimes it's even more difficult to get your business started there because there's a lot, even though there's demand, right? The problem with that in the logistics industry is you don't have the supply of trucks because there's so much demand that all the other brokers and providers have got all the trucks locked up. So even though you have freight, you don't have trucks. It's a very complex kind of feel of truck to load ratio, right? If you have more trucks than loads, then it's easy to find trucks, but rates go down. But if you have more loads than you have trucks, rates go up, but it's harder to find trucks, right? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. So I don't think there's any perfect timing to start. I think the key is get educated, find your niche, and then really just dig in. Focus in on sales skills, because those are the skills that are going to pay the bills. Hope that helps. All right, we're going to do maybe one more question, but hang around here. Let me see. Oh, by the way, do me a favor. If you guys got value from this, all right, do me a favor. I'm going to ask you a favor right now. Okay, hold on. I'm going to give you a link I want you to go to. Do me a favor. Okay, good. Oh, Jesus. Come on. Okay. If you guys got value from this live, okay, do me a huge favor. If you're a student or if you're just checked out these lives, do me a huge favor and check out this link. This link is for I'm just asking you a favor, write me a short Google review. If you got value from this training, from this live, or if you've gotten value from the Freight Broker Bootcamp online course, if I've answered your question, if you found any value in this live, do me a huge favor, write a short Google review. Truly appreciate it. There was no price of admission. I didn't ask you for a credit card to be a part of these lives. I didn't ask you for your email. I didn't ask you for anything. Okay. And I rarely do, but I'm making a huge push on Google reviews. I think we have over 60 5-star reviews, but I never really focused in on Google reviews before. And so I really want to build those up and let people know what other people think about Freight Broker Bootcamp. Now, give an honest review. If it was a 3, then it was a 3. Just tell me why. If it was a 4, if it was a 5, just tell me why. But hit me up with a review. I'd truly appreciate it. Okay. If you're new, hit me up with that review. I'd love to hear your feedback, whether you're a new student or you just got a lot of value out of this live. So I'm going to leave that up there. And then let's see, is there any final questions? Because I'm already past the 30-minute mark. Question. I heard it's good to add logistics in the business name. Is that important to have or just helpful for customers? Well, having freight or logistics or transportation in the name makes it easier for someone to understand what you do. So that's the general theory. So yeah, I think there is some truth to that, but I wouldn't necessarily be limited, you know what I mean, to that. There's plenty of companies that don't have logistics in their name. But I think as a general rule, it's probably smart to have logistics or trucking or transportation or something in your that gives you a little bit more description. So I don't think it's a hard and fast rule, but I think it's a general rule that a lot of people believe because it makes it a little bit easier for people. If they land on your website, they know what you do. If you give them your business card, they know what you do, right? So I hope that helps. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Oh, Mike says, do you miss it? Here's what I miss. I miss a lot of the people that I worked with, right? I miss the high energy, fast pace, right? I do miss that. So yeah, I do miss elements of it. But when I started my business back in 2003, I knew my goal was to ramp it up and sell the company. I knew that, right? That was the plan from the beginning. Not that there's anything wrong with the logistics industry, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've owned many different businesses since 1994 when I first got started. And many of them failed. And, a few of them have been pretty successful and we've been very blessed. But, I'm not the guy that was going to spend the next 30 or 40 years working in the trucking logistics industry. I saw an opportunity, right? We filled the gap. And then some of the reason why I don't miss it is because what it allowed me to do over the last 9-10 years is stay home and spend a lot of time with my family, right? My daughters are now 16 and 19. So imagine about 10 years ago, they were about 9 and 6 or 10 and 7. So I've been able to spend an enormous amount of time with them working from home. And so that probably wouldn't have been able to happen with my brokerage because I still would have had to have worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week, depending upon what was going on. So those are kind of the pros and cons. I hope that helps, Mike. That's a little bit of personal insight into me about, do I miss it? But yeah, there's elements of it that I definitely miss. I miss some of the sales, right? I miss some of my clients. I miss a lot of the agents that we used to work with, right? So yeah, the relationships I think I miss probably the most. So I hope that helps. Do me a huge favor, guys. If you didn't write a review yet, go to this link. Do me a huge favor, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/reviews. Write a quick Google review. You'll see, I think there's about 60 plus reviews there. Write a short review if you got any value from the Freight Broker Bootcamp training or if you got any value from this live. Totally appreciate it. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks all.